Good morning, and welcome to L. Douglas Wilder, continuing 30 years of history then and now. I'm Susan Gooden, Dean of the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs here at Virginia Commonwealth University. And it is truly a pleasure to welcome each of you to today's event that we are co-hosting along with our partners at Virginia Union University. Today will be a tremendous day of programming as we reflect on the rich legacy of Governor Wilder. On this historic year of his 30th anniversary as his election as governor. Today will be a very robust day. In addition to hearing from Governor Wilder in his keynote address very shortly, you will also hear from a panel of students who are representing VCU and the Wilder School as they think about civic engagement in the 21st century. We will also have a panel that looks at the legal and administrative implications of Governor Wilder's administration. And we will round out the day with a panel that focuses on the 2020 presidential election. So it will be a rich day for sure. I would like to welcome all of our participants from the Commonwealth of Virginia, from across the country, and indeed from around the world. And now I'd like to ask my colleague at Virginia Union University, Provost Terrell Strayhorn, to offer a few words of welcome as well.
Thank you, Dean Gooden, and good morning to everyone. It has been an honor for Virginia Union as Governor Wilder's alma mater to partner with Virginia Commonwealth University to bring you this dynamic day-long event. For over 20 years, Virginia Union University has housed the L. Douglas Wilder Collection, honoring the life and career of the first elected African-American governor in the United States, and one of the university's most prominent alumni in the L. Douglas Wilder Library and Learning Resource Center. The collection covers Governor Wilder's civic, military, and political career from the 1950s through present day, and it contains official papers, photographs, negatives, audio and video recordings, awards, memorabilia, and other incredible treasures. So friends, we invite you to come to our campus and visit all that the Wilder Collection has to offer. I'm looking forward now to an incredible day of reflection and discussion on the incredible accomplishments and impact of the nation's first Black governor, L. Douglas Wilder, Virginia Union University, class of 1951.
Thank you so much, Provost Strayhorn. We'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge many of our sponsors, all of our sponsors who indeed are making this event a reality. We appreciate your generous support as you see the names across your screen. Your support, the support of all of our sponsors, has allowed us to bring this event to you at no cost. We thank you for your generous support. Proceeds from this event not only support the execution of this event itself, but also the awarding of scholarships to students at VCU and at Virginia Union University, as well as the Wilder School's work in the area of social equity in the Virginia Union University Wilder Collection. Thank you to all of our sponsors. We offer a special thanks to our patron sponsors. They include Altria Client Services, Atlantic Union Bank, Bank of America, Brent Jackson Law Group, Norfolk State University, Virginia Commonwealth University Center for Public Policy, Virginia State University, and Virginia Union University. We also thank our session sponsor, Virginia is for Lovers. We give a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Dominion Energy. Actions speak louder. And now we are pleased to welcome from Dominion, the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Communications, Dr. Bill Murray. Dr. Murray?
Good morning. As is always the case, these virtual sound sessions, I hope everyone's able to hear me okay. Assuming that you can, I'm going to be very brief. Landmark as the election of Governor Wilder was, what followed is even more important, and that is the governing of his administration. I learned in graduate school, as I suspect Dean Gooden did as well, that public administration is everything that happens after the last election night cheer. And the Wilder administration was known not just for the landmark election of the administration, but for the actions that followed, particularly in difficult budget times and the budget rigor with which the administration approached a significant recession during their time frame. The Federalist Papers are back in the news somewhat this in our cultural moment because of the musical Hamilton. And one of the things the Federalist teaches us is that which is administered is best. And certainly the Wilder administration's administrative excellence exemplified that tradition. And as we celebrate the election, absolutely we should, as we celebrate the accomplishments of Governor Wilder, which absolutely we should not lose sight of the very significant administrative accomplishments of his tenure as governor and the important work the Wilder School does in advancing public administration, both in Virginia and nationally. And with that, I will let you return to your program. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary, and thank you again to Dominion Energy for your generous support of today's event. As I shared earlier, part of the proceeds from this event are designed to support student scholarships at the Wilder School and at Virginia Union University. Today, Provost Strayhorn and I will award 2 of those scholarships. Our first is to Sambo Chanda. Sambo is a PhD student in the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs. She is a candidate in our public policy program. Sambo hails from the country of Zambia, and her commitment to leadership was at a very early age, has been demonstrated throughout her life and her career, looking at public finance, international development, and gender issues. We are truly pleased to acknowledge and award this $2,500 scholarship to Sambo Chanda, who exemplifies and embodies the leadership values and virtues of Governor Wilder. Congratulations, Sambo. And to award and announce our scholarship recipient from Virginia Union University, Professor Terrell Strayhorn.
Thank you, Dean Gooden, and congratulations again to Samba. Virginia Union University is proud to announce and award a scholarship to Raekwon Carter. Raekwon Carter is a native of Richmond, Virginia. He graduated with honors from Richmond Community High School and is now a graduating senior here at the university, majoring in chemistry. He conducts research in the School of Arts and Sciences under the tutelage of Professor Carl Jackson. Raekwon's favorite quote is from Frederick Douglass: "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Mr. Carter was selected to receive this prestigious student scholarship because he embodies the spirit and values of Governor Wilder, as well as his beloved Virginia Union. Not only does Raekwon and Governor Wilder share an academic major in chemistry, but both are equally as committed to the pursuit of knowledge, justice, and collective uplift. Congratulations, Raekwon. Keep shining. And now I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing the President and CEO of Virginia Union University, Dr. Hakeem J. Lucas. Dr. Lucas is admired by many for his leadership and advocacy of student-driven policies and the inclusion of student voices in the university's decision-making process. He is, by all accounts, a transcendent leader who has chosen education as his form of social justice advocacy. To him, education is the doorway to opportunity, success, and having your voice heard in a global society. Dr. Lucas is a strong believer in the importance and significance of historically Black colleges and universities and works to ensure their viable sustainability. He launched the Center for the Study of HBCUs here at Virginia Union, where I serve as director. He is a senior fellow of the Southern Education Foundation and serves on other civic boards. So it's my pleasure to introduce to some and to present to others Dr. Hakeem J. Lucas, President and CEO of Virginia Union University.
Thank you so much, Provost. It's exciting to be here with all of you. I want to thank Dean Gooden for all her work and the partnership with the Wilder School of Government and Public Policy for all the work that they have done to make this 30th commemoration as just a wonderful success. I am excited for Virginia Union University to serve as a co-host of this commemoration, marking the 30th anniversary of L. Douglas Wilder becoming the first elected African-American governor in the United States. To all of you who are tuning in, Richmond, all of you who are tuning in from around the Commonwealth, all of you who are tuning in from around the world, we're excited and we thank you for taking the time in these days to celebrate the accomplishments of this great man. I would like to also take the opportunity to thank all of the sponsors. You see some of them on the screen, but historically, Black colleges and universities have stepped up in a huge way to also support Governor Wilder in this momentous occasion. I would like to call them by name because they deserve to be heard. The first, Virginia State University, Norfolk State University, and Dr. and Mrs. William Harvey, the President and First Lady of Hampton University, also made a personal gift to this wonderful occasion. On behalf of the entire VU student body, alumni, faculty, and staff, we are proud of our alum, Governor Wilder. He is a representation and a symbol of what we like to call a promise of a limitless future. And he is an example, a living legend of that promise. Governor Wilder, as many of you may know, is a native of Richmond's historic Churchill district. He's a decorated war hero, and he earned a Bronze Star in ground combat during the Korean War. After the war, Governor Wilder would come to attend Howard University School of Law, and he would establish a law practice in Richmond shortly after his graduation. In 1969, just yesterday, for all of you young people, he won his first election in the Virginia Senate, and he served 5 terms. He was then, based on that one experience, preparing himself to make a mark on history and a legacy that we are all celebrating today. In 1985, he was elected to become the 35th Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, making him the first African American to serve, making him the first African American to serve. Next, he was elected and became, as you all know, in 1990, he became the first African American to serve in the 66th governor of Virginia. It is an exciting opportunity to take this moment to introduce to you a man that means so much to us here in the Commonwealth.
I did all that. Like when it was my time to hop on,
to Virginia Union University.
It didn't even give me
it
an option.
Critical.
I know, but when it
in this day and time,
I know, but when it was
to
my time,
continue our work,
when I went
in
to get
ensuring
into
that we
everything,
are
it didn't
making
even give me an
our
option
match
on
and
when
our
back
mark
to
in
join or
society.
anything. I just went on my link and
It is
Zoom, and I had
an
that
important
open, and I got
conversation for us to have today,
But on one
and
connect,
it is
it just
also an
says
honor
stop,
once
test,
again
view,
for
and it
me
says you are.
to introduce to you our very own Governor L. Douglas Wilder. Thank you.
More than 400 years after the first enslaved Africans arrived on American shores, one of the descendants of those enslaved people made history, becoming the first African-American governor in the nation. It was a bright and cold January day in 1990 when Lawrence Douglas Wilder made a transformative vow.
As governor of Virginia.
As governor of Virginia.
according to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
It's a great day for Virginia.
One of the great questions of the day, when Doug Wilder became the first African-American governor in our nation's history, was simple, yet profound. Was this event an aberration? Or did the walls of injustice truly crumble? 30 years later, the answer is clear. According to Ray Boone, the late civil rights activist and publisher of the Richmond Free Press, Governor Wilder's election took the ceilings off all our ambitions. Across our nation, people of all backgrounds are taking oaths, working in positions of high authority and responsibility. After Douglas Wilder's inauguration, this has become the new normal.
Everyone stands on the shoulders of others. And I think that's something important to keep in mind. And I know that Governor Wilder would be the first to acknowledge that. And he's had broad shoulders for others to stand on, not only in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but nationally. And, you know, it goes without saying that breaking those barriers and accomplishing the senior levels of leadership, that does send a very, very important message relative to opportunity.
Part of what it represented for so many of us was the real American dream. You know, the real opportunity that any of us have as an American to now take on a position of true leadership. And if it could happen in Virginia, we thought, my goodness, it could happen just about anywhere.
To this day, after having covered elections really since the 1960s, there was never an election like Doug Wilder's. The international coverage, not just the national coverage, was blinding. You couldn't go anywhere without running into a camera from someplace around the world. So it made a big difference in terms of Virginia's image. It changed Virginia's image. And I think in that way, it contributed to the demographic diversity that has transformed Virginia.
I don't think this nation, particularly U.S. history, will ever forget his place in it. And so whether or not you were born in that historical context, his achievement transcends time period and is something that all of us must stop, pause, and talk about. He rewrote the history books. Douglas Wilder rewrote the history books.
And history records Governor Wilder's performance as governor as an exemplary steward of Virginia's finances, an achievement that perhaps defied expectations.
He has a reputation as being socially progressive, but fiscally conservative. As bad as times were financially during his term, he knew that Virginia would recover from the recession and that we would have needs that we have to address. And so he basically was the champion of a general obligation bond issue that would benefit building projects at Virginia's colleges and universities, its mental health facilities, and its park system. It was approved overwhelmingly by the people of Virginia.
He left a great hallmark in terms of excellence in administering government in a way that was both loyal to fiscal soundness and social justice.
The victory in 1989 didn't come easily in a state with only 15% of its population African American, and it provides a lesson for all people of all backgrounds in how to overcome negative and false stereotypes.
Doug Wilder cares about the people of Virginia. That's why he went over 3,500 miles to every county in Virginia.
Doug Wilder practiced what is known as retail politics, covering every county and township in the Commonwealth during the election and on listening tours once he was in office.
When you're breaking down barriers the way Governor Wilder did, you have to reach out to people personally. You have to let them see that you don't wear horns, that they like you. And once you like a person, you're much less likely to vote against them and certainly to campaign against them.
He had this uncanny ability to reach out and communicate with people at all levels and from all ethnic backgrounds. It didn't really matter. And I don't think they saw him as the first African-American governor. They saw him as Doug Wilder, governor.
He has been my mentor and friend, and he's the one responsible for mentioning my name and thought that I might be a little boy from Petersburg who could fill these shoes, certainly. But not just me from a personal side, but many people, black, white, men, women of all ethnicities, saw themselves that they could do that. And I like the way he said that from Church Hill to Capitol Hill was a short distance, but it was a mighty steep climb. But he always climbed not just for himself, but he climbed with us and for us.
With his parents' encouragement but limited financial support, Governor Wilder remembers often having to walk from his Churchill home to the Virginia Union campus where he earned his degree in chemistry. He would later attend Howard University Law School.
But the key ingredient to any achievement in those regards is education, because that is the key that unlocks most of the barring doors. And if you can do that, you have begun the long, arduous journey of moving up that ladder of success.
As a teacher myself, when you ask children, what would you like to be when you grow up? The first thing you hear, a policeman, a teacher, a fireman. Now they can have aspirations to go up to the governor's office and, shall I say, even the president of the United States, because Governor Wilder was governor.
His commitment to education is seen today at both Virginia Commonwealth University, where the School of Government and Public Affairs bears his name, and at his alma mater, which proudly houses the archives of his public service.
I think it just kind of speaks to the university and its prestigious people who've been here before in the past, and, you know, as a young African-American male, just kind of try to keep that path going along.
When you walk in Virginia University, you feel passionate that someone who was a first elected Black governor in the state of Virginia, you just feel like, well, that could inspire me to do wonderful things.
Today, Governor Wilder spends his days at Virginia Commonwealth University as a distinguished professor, challenging the next generation to make a difference.
I would like to encourage more young people to understand that you don't have to be in elected office to lead. You don't have to have a title to lead. Speak, demand, insist. For those who are there, if they don't do it, vote them out.
As Governor Wilder walks across the VCU campus, he can see a virtual tapestry of all cultures, races, and religious beliefs. The ramification of his election and his competent service in office are clear.
Thank you so much for everything that you've done for and accomplished. My father actually mentioned not too long ago, it's one of his proudest moments.
I've known him most of my life. And he's always been an outstanding citizen, you know, as far as, you know, trying to help the community and giving back to the community.
Many of the experiences that he's advocated for and the things that he's pushed for, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's economic investment, he really knows and understands the plight of the people and the concerns of the people. And I think that has always been something that he has taken very seriously. And regardless of whether it was from the post of being a member of the General Assembly or from being a governor or from being mayor, that's something that he's always taken to heart.
We're a multifaceted society, and because of his courage and his commitment, and ultimately because of his love of people, I think we have an example that will always be a shining example for us to try to measure up to in our nation.
A man who embodies more positive and powerful personal energy than most, Doug Wilder does not dwell on the past. Instead, he looks toward a future where the diversity he helped to spark will play a vital role in the American political system and beyond.
The one thing I think we should never forget is that Governor Wilder is still alive. He's still active. He's still involved. His legacy continues to grow. The world needs another Douglas Wilder.
People said I was absolutely crazy to even think I could run for lieutenant governor and then ultimately governor. And yet I found it the most rewarding experience that I've ever had in my life. That is knowing Virginia, knowing the people, recognizing that the differences between us are so few if we took the time to share what they were and to understand what it means. Good morning. I'm just grateful and humbled by the great outpouring of support and the numbers of people who have made this 30th observation of my election possible. I am greatly indebted to Dean Gooden here at the Wilder School and to Dr. Lucas, president of my alma mater at Virginia Union, for combining forces to work to make this happen in spite of all of the things that could prevent it from taking place. It shows you what people can do when they make up their minds to do it, and they can overcome all kinds of things. I'm also reminded of what my mother told me when I won the election as the state senator in Richmond, 1969. Don't let your head get too big now. And I can tell you, I've had to remember that. And in listening to some of the people who have said so many of the kind things they've said this morning, it makes me remember that I can't allow it to happen. I can't tell you how indebted I am to all of America's, Virginia's people. Working together, also for bringing this about, are the people who work with Dr. Gooden and Dr. Lucas, the technicians, the strategists, the people who put it together in terms of working to ensure that this was successful for the people. It's a memorable occasion for me, and I hope for those of you who are participating that you see that same type of situation occurring. It shows you when people make up their minds that they're going to do something, they can get it done. And it's illustrative of the focus of what happens to be our focus on this discussion. We're talking about leadership today. We'll be talking about leadership and how we need it so desperately. Current example of combining skills, joining forces, and coalition building. I'm grateful to all of those who have made this possible. I said on a radio show recently that I never considered myself differently from other people. I never did. I was born in America, born in Virginia, a product thereof. Regretfully, there have been too many who feel that the differences of race, gender, or social condition separate us into enclaves. I never believed that. I wasn't raised to believe that. Unfortunately, there are many of us, and many people rather, who have used this false narrative to divide us. They continue so today, some of them. But as poet Langston Hughes said in his letter of a mother to her son, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. And yet I've had opportunities that my mother and father and their forebears didn't have. People were denied so much, and yet I benefited from them believing that we could move and I could move. I've had the encouragement and support at home, my community. They believed in hard work, determination, and fortitude. But more importantly, they also believed in education would be the key to unlock those doors that would be of denial. America, yes, is still in search of itself. It still seeks to emulate by deed the words uttered by Patrick Henry in the church, St. John's Church, 6 blocks from where my father had built his home. And I was fortunate to have instilled in me by my parents, older siblings, and the community, the value of education and perseverance. And so we learn so much from our history. It affords us so many opportunities to learn. Yet it's almost impossible not to know, to do that rather, if you're not taught what that history is. I'm not talking about Black or African American history. I'm talking about all of America's history, setting aside a month or designating a historic event, as something that we should observe, and then we go off to living a different life that's sounding empty. I grew up in a segregated society, schools, hospitals, places of entertainment, hotels, restaurants. However, our community was always one of encouragement. We had the best teachers, though they were not paid the same as white teachers. We had the same kinds of encouragement in the community, though many people were uneducated themselves. They pushed me to pursue higher education goals. Oh yes, I learned how to lead in Korea. And when I came back from Korea, I learned for the very first time that whites and blacks and others could live together. Harry Truman had desegregated the armed forces, and it worked. And so when I came back, I saw and was asked while I was in Korea to lead white soldiers and to be a commander of those persons. And it worked. And I couldn't believe it could work in Korea and could not work in the US. How can we not do this? I said. And so when I came back, though my major was chemistry, though I believed that I might have a career further in chemistry, Brown versus Board of Education decision came about in 1954, and that just did it for me. It pretty much said that, yes, what we have said heretofore in Plessy versus Ferguson was wrong, that we cannot have two separate societies, and that education is the key to that. And so, yes, those schools will be open. So I abandoned my concerns for chemistry, went to Howard Law School. Now, when you get to Howard Law School and they're instructed by people to say, when you graduate, go back to your communities and help. Don't go back to see how much you can do for yourself. Go back to see what you can do to help others. Go to provide opportunities that would unlock doors for them to proceed. And so I did that, located my law office some 3 blocks really from where I was born and where my family lived. And in addition to building a successful law practice, I started criticizing everything that was going on. Didn't like the way this was taking place, didn't like that was taking place, writing letters to the editor of the newspapers, and they started publishing my letters. And then my law practice, though thriving, left me believing that there was more I needed to do. I started criticizing those people who were in elected office, those seeking elected office. And then it made me recognize for the very first time how important government was, those who sought to be government leaders were in determining the future of individuals. I needed to be a part. I say, wow, I don't want to go around shaking hands and asking for votes and begging for money for campaign purposes. That's not for me. And yet I couldn't stay on the outside. I knew then I needed to do something that would make me want to be a part of the polity. The polity is the decision-making process. I didn't want a fair piece of the pie. I wanted my hand to be on the knife that cut the pie. I wanted to be certain that I could let my voice be heard. And so I started helping people getting elected to office. I felt obligated to speak wherever I could to help those needs. And I entered politics, as I said, because I wanted to be assured that we were more than a nation of words, but one of realistic meaning. I wanted to make certain that the Constitution and the pledge to the flag were not momentary, salving gestures. I wanted to know that the flag I fought for in Korea, guaranteeing the rights of those being denied freedom, was also my flag at home, and that I could sing the national anthem, knowing that it would be true for me. So when I was elected to the state Senate, the first person of color elected since Reconstruction, my political learning curve had just begun. I didn't even know that the Virginia state song was Carry Me Back to Old Virginia. I didn't know it. I knew the words to the song because we were taught that in school. We had to sing it. And yet, those who know what that song said and what it meant was a lamentation of a slave wanting to be reunited with his master because he had been separated from old master. And the second stanza of the song even says, even in heaven, he wanted to be reunited with old master. So how can a man be free if the ogre of bigotry pervades his every waking moment and then pirouettes through his dreams for plaudits? So it didn't make sense to me, even though I had only been in the state Senate for 2 weeks when I made that speech. I got letters from all over the world. People condemned what I was saying, and yet people supported what I was saying. I never heard that song sung again. And though it took 17 years thereafter, that state song was finally declared to be emeritus. It was never sung again. And so, yes, I not only never had any problems about re-election, I didn't have any opposition after that. And I stayed in the state Senate for 16 years. And while I was there, I decided to do some other things. I said, look, we want and should honor people who are doing the kinds of things that we are speaking about. And that's why I fought for and got Virginia to be the first state in the nation to declare a legislative holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I introduced legislation making that sickle cell anemia be covered and recognized by the Virginia state health plans. I chaired the committee revising the Juvenile Code of Virginia, getting rid of status offenses, those offenses which means if adults would commit them, they couldn't be guilty of anything. We created the Rehabilitation School Authority, which means when young people committed offenses which took them from their families and put them in places of detention, that they would not have their education interfered with. We likewise, measures that I wanted to do to entrust the people of Virginia to know that we can make a difference. I put in legislation way back then declaring that we have uniform training for police, all of the people in Virginia. That was way back yonder. And so police reform didn't start with me just last week, last year, or last month. I knew some of the kinds of things. And so after I did that, I wanted to be certain when I did run for lieutenant governor that I had something to say that I was going to do based on what I had done. I wanted a record of accomplishment. I would say to you, once I became governor, how disappointed I was to find out that we were broke before I even made my first speech. We were some $2+ billion in the hole. And I can tell you that everyone said we are going to have to raise taxes. I said, no, we don't. We're going to have to be realistic. We're going to have to spend for necessities, not niceties. And so in doing so, I created what was then referred to as the rainy day fund, the reserve fund. I was able to make certain that we didn't raise taxes and that when we did take money out of that reserve fund, we would put it back. Every governor since that time has availed themselves of that reserve fund. And I'll bet the current governor would be one of the first to tell you he's happy to know that even though our revenues are shorted today, even though we are not going to get the kinds of monies coming in that we may have thought so, he doesn't have to tell the people of Virginia he's going to raise their taxes because that reserve will be there for him to be able to go into it and to get it. And I would say to young people who are interested in elected office, first, establish a career. Then let that career direct you as to your performance. And let that be what you present to the people. Last year, on last November, marked the 30th anniversary of my being elected governor. And I said I'm more proud of the people of Virginia than anything else because of that. Humble and grateful for the undying support that I've received throughout the 30-year odyssey that I've been involved. But what happened in Virginia 30 years ago was felt across the nation, even in many quarters of the world. And I'm humbled by the many correspondences relative thereto. No, it's not been easy in seeing many of the half-truths being made true, but it was far better than it ever was before for those who never tasted or breathed any air of freedom. But we work to make it better, not just for some, but for all. And I find leadership to be a tautology. It defines itself. It means to lead. I can't tell you how pleased I am to have received correspondences likewise from two of my predecessors, Tim Kaine, who said he would be watching today. Thank you, Tim, for so doing. We likewise know that there are opportunities for people to participate who might not have to take the time. My good friend Mark Warner likewise wrote me this morning, and he said, not only will I thank you, not only do I wish you well, but I want to thank you for giving me my start. And so we're not in this just for ourselves. We can work together. Parties can work together. People can work together. Races can work together. America can do better than that, and we will do better than that. Political leadership means leadership for the people. Lincoln put it best: it should be of, for, and by the people. And there are good and able people serving in leadership roles at all levels. They comprise a mixture of races, creeds, class. Is it too much to ask for honest and sincere communication between those elected or appointed to address the current problems evidenced by the current pandemic? Is there a need for further study at any level of government to know of the disparity in education, healthcare, and housing? One of the things I learned early on in my political career, that my one-word definition for politics is money. Students here at VCU, and I have argued as I teach classes with them on occasions, to tell me what does not involve money. And they start off as, I got something. And they eventually say, you're right. You can't name anything that we're doing. And so if that's the case, it's far important, more important to recognize and to know that keeping your eye on the money and making certain who has that money and who benefits therefrom, that's the political message I'd like to send. And so the voters are told that the opponents are bad people who must be voted out. The other side says the same thing. And so I've come to believe, like some recent theorists, that we are really becoming a duopoly. And that is a political condition in which power is concentrated in two groups. In this instance, that power is concentrated in two parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. You vote one group in because they are the good guys. And then in the next election, you give the bad guys a chance. Were the good guys or the bad guys in office when the waters in Flint, Michigan became contaminated, tolerated, or ignored? There was a time not too long ago when there were limits as to how much money could be contributed to political campaigns. All of that was changed some few years ago when the Supreme Court and Citizens United declared that a corporation was a person. I had been taught in every lawyer that I've ever known was taught in law school that a corporation was not a person. But when that decision came down, it helped the duopoly. And a duopoly, as I've said, is a question when you only have two sellers. And so they only have to compete against each other. So this time I'm in, my people get it. Next time you're in, your people get it. But do the real people of America get it? And so our leaders must constantly demand that the fullness of rights guaranteed by nature and by law, that all men are born equal, not were born equal. We must live in the present, not in the past. We must learn from the past. And if we don't, we are doomed to repeat it. I can't tell you how pleased and how fortunate I am to know that this January, I will be approaching my 90th birthday. Look how fortunate I am to even be standing here today. And look how many people, unfortunately, even never got a chance to breathe an air of freedom. And so with that, you and I have an opportunity to make certain we reach out to continuing to demand what's right, to criticize what's wrong, and to fearlessly face the future. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor Wilder. We really appreciate your inspiring speech and your inspiring talk. All the accolades that have come through in the chat feature, thanks to so many of the participants. We really appreciate, I've been keeping an eye on the chat room, people who worked with Governor Wilder's campaign, who grew up in the same community with him, from Richmond, from across the nation, and indeed from across the world. So we really appreciate all of the wonderful accolades that you have provided and your engagement with us today. So we just want to say thank you to Governor Wilder. And we also want to take a moment to say if there are questions that people have or any comments that people would like to make regarding the speech, or if you have accolades that you'd like to make, please put those in the chat. And if you do have any specific questions, we would be happy to take those. And as we're pausing for that, one of the things that I would also like to bring your attention to is that several weeks ago, Governor Wilder and I sat down and did several podcasts together. Those podcasts, these are short podcasts, 6 of those, and they are available for your viewing and for your educational use so that you can learn more about the life and the legacy of Governor Wilder. And we hope that you will share that information. So at this time, we will come to the close of our opening session. Again, to thank you for all of your, oh, I'm sorry, Governor Wilder, are you still with us?
With you.
Okay, wonderful. So would you be willing to take a few questions if there are questions from the audience?
I will do what you've always ordered me to do.
Thank you so much. Let me start off by asking you, Governor, you know, I was sharing that there are so many accolades coming in through the chat feature, and people who were part of your campaign, and people have fond memories of your election and the inauguration for sure. One of the things that really stands out is your connection with people, and you've always talked about that it's important for politicians to listen to people. Can you talk a little bit more about your connection with people, and how do you think politicians could do a better job, perhaps, at building that connection with people in their decision making?
Well, thank you, Dean, and it's been very good to continue. One of the things that I learned early on is that in my political career, I was taught it at home, but I saw it in practice. And you've heard me speak about Virginia and how Virginia was supposed to be the state that doesn't do this, and you couldn't get elected in Virginia. You can't judge people by how they look, where they live, where they come from. One of my good friends up in Christiansburg, Virginia, former state senator Madison Marie, helping me. His grandfather was a captain in the Confederate Army. My grandfather was a slave, and he was helping me. We were doing a commercial down in Lunenburg, Virginia, and he said, "Doug, isn't it interesting? Here I am helping you to get elected, and when you consider the reverse roles of our grandfathers, isn't that interesting?" And he told me when he said, "Doug, when you take that trip around the state, you need to shake every hand. You can't go in, because if you go into a store and the bread man will know you had stopped at one store, and he'll go and tell the people at the next store that you stopped there. And if you don't come there, they're going to be mad." He's saying, if you go into the store, you've got to remember to shake the hands of everybody. And I did that. And I was going into this place, and I'd leaving and didn't shake one man's hand. And as it turned out, I stopped by and said, "Yes, sir, how are you? And I'm Doug Wilder. I'm running for governor." And he said, "I want to ask you something." He had tobacco streams coming out of his mouth. He had a straw hat on, bandana around his neck. And he said, "I want to talk to you about this abortion thing." I said, "Oh my goodness, I could have gotten out of the store, wouldn't have had to talk to the man." And then before I could finish, he said, "Ain't no man's business no way, is it?" I said, "Wow, you're absolutely right." For myself, I said, "Look how I misjudged this man. Look how I looked at him and determined what he was going to say. Look how I formed an opinion of who he was without even hearing him." And so it meant so much to me to reinforce that traveling the state of Virginia, and one thing we didn't say here, Virginia has the smallest population of people of color of any of the southern states. The 14% population vote at this time is about a step or two more than it was then. It's only about 8.8% when I ran. But I never, ever questioned whether I could win or whether I should run, because I knew that if you don't judge people, and as Dr. King said, you judge them by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. It meant so much to me to show that to the world, to show that to the nation, that we in this country can indeed overcome.
Thank you, Governor. We also have a question. We'll kick it off with a question from Tanja Roberts, who asks, what was the poignant moment for you after you realized you had won the governorship?
Well, when you said poignant, I never doubted whether I would win. The poignant moment to me came the next morning when I got up and I said, well, I've got to do something now. I got to get to work. And, you know, you accept the congratulations, et cetera, et cetera. But the poignant moment came to me when I recognized, now I've got to start. The unfortunate thing, as you've heard me describe, I found out we were broke. I didn't know it. And the poignancy was, to me, this is no time at all for celebration. This is no time for you to take victory laps. You got to start work now. And I think it's important, and this is one of the things that I've been saying to young people as well. I want them to be involved in a career to the extent of doing something, and then taking that forward to the extent that they can improve. And so I guess the poignancy also was that it was not a me thing, it was a we thing. The people won. I didn't win, but I gloried in that victory.
Thank you, Governor. We have another question that asks, how were you able to get elected with so few minorities in the electorate? So at the time of your election, there were about 15% African Americans in the Commonwealth of Virginia. How were you able to get elected? A lot of times people talk about your historic election as the first elected African American governor, but certainly your support came far beyond the African American community.
Well, because I believed in people. But as I tried to say, I likewise had been a part of working across party lines, working across coalition lines, bringing people together. One of the things I did when I was in the state Senate, I started what was called the Democratic Black Caucus. It ultimately became the Legislative Black Caucus. There were only 3 of us, but the Democratic Black Caucus was huge. It was big, and we met with people all over the state. But we likewise combined with people who were not of the Black Caucus, but we shared the same degrees of concern. We worked with the people who were in education. We worked with the Virginia Education Association. We worked with AFL-CIO and labor. We worked with the business communities because I wanted to make certain that this group had representation. But in forming this group, we met on a regular basis across the state of Virginia with people. We had organizations, and those organizations were political organizations, and we met on a regular basis. And so to that extent, I was able to call on people to find out from them what is relevant, what are issues, what do I need to do? Help me get that message, and then I can get that message to the people. I would hope that we could find that kind of opportunity still existing today.
Thank you, Governor. Glenn Davison asks, Governor, can you share with your audience your conversation with South Africa's Wilhelm de Klerk in Pretoria and how you were involved in the ending of apartheid in South Africa?
Well, I met with de Klerk later in Washington at the Vice President's home. But prior to that time, I had decided that Virginia should set an example by not trading with South Africa, not buying bonds, not being involved supporting apartheid. And another example of it was that you talk about one thing, but you're doing something differently. So I wanted to show, in talking with de Klerk, former president, he tried to let me see that they were doing all that was possible at that time. At that time, Mandela had gotten out, and we've had subsequent conversations in that regard. But there again, Virginia was the first state in the nation to cut off any relationships with South Africa relative to buying, funding commercials and any commercial activity. And it had other states to follow. So again, Virginia was in the leadership.
So we have a question from Dr. Ambu Arubigan, who is joining us from Chennai, India. And she says, I'd like to ask Governor Wilder, what would be your advice for aspiring candidates given the current political climate in the United States? How would you motivate those to still serve?
Well, first of all, I would encourage, as I've said earlier, have a career. What do you have in mind? What do you do? You ask some of the candidates who are running for office, what have you done? And they'll say, well, you know, I haven't had a chance. Why haven't you had a chance? Have you been living? Have you been involved? Have you been out with the people? Have you listened to the people? Are you interested in running for yourself? Don't let politics be your life. Let it be a part of what you're doing in terms of your giving. And so it should be listening to the people, advocating for the people. The words of Lincoln, as I spoke to, are for and by the people. And don't be involved with the selfish purposes of the honorifics that come your way. It's very difficult. The other thing is, that's not allowed. I hear people say, well, you start at the school board and then you go up. The school board needs the best possible minds it can have. Not to go up from the school board, but be on the school board, stay on the school board to give the kinds of aspirations you can, the kinds of encouragement you can. If you want to go to a higher office, have a record of what you have done for the people. If you've done nothing for anybody but yourself, then what are you running for?
Ruben Rodriguez asks, what are your reflections on the current state of sports in the United States and the intersection and their intersection to social justice in the current pandemic?
the current state of force.
Sports. Football, basketball, sports.
I think sports has its place. I've been an avid sports follower for years, but sometimes things get out of place. To tell a youngster that he can make hundreds of millions of dollars if he plays a sport, but another youngster can't get a job. Someplace something is wrong. You have to play sports to make a living. No, sports is a business as we see it today, professional. I encourage all persons who want to be involved in that in terms of business to do fine. But when you have sports competing now with life, when people in a pandemic are worrying about what basketball game or football game they're going to see, rather than to be concerned about who's going to see it, who might die as a result of commingling, not wearing a mask, not doing these types of things, it's misplaced. And when you look at what's the opportunities that are being given in sports, look at the difficulty with my good friend Jackie Robinson had to break in, or to look at Arthur Ashe as to how he broke in, or Muhammad Ali, as the sacrifices that he made. So many people opened so many doors for so many people, other people, and yet today, many of those are forgotten. So I think sports has its place, but as it relates to this pandemic, I think we all ought to be involved together.
Thank you, Governor. So this is an interesting question. Daryl asks, what is your next goal, Governor?
Well, I'll tell you what, my next goal is to be able to celebrate my 90th anniversary, my birthday in January, and then to look forward to celebrating the 91st a year from now. That's my goal. Seriously, though, I will be always involved in being an advocate for the people. I intend to be at the Virginia Commonwealth University as long as health permits me so to do. I am very much interested in the kinds of support that I receive, helping to prepare others to be a part of the, as I call it, the polity, the decision-making processes in its government. And that's a goal that never changes.
PQ Fulton asks, Governor Wilder, the recent protest after the murder of George Floyd sparked the largest civil protest in our history. Over 20 million who said enough is enough. What do people interested in civil society need to do now that the people have the attention of the world?
To demand more of their leaders. The problems didn't come to bear when George Floyd was killed. They were there before. As I said earlier, the water in Flint, Michigan didn't just get poisoned, and it was ignored by both parties. People have not been acknowledged as being a part of the society that should be. Healthcare is down. Look at what's taking place with education, the disparity in education. Those things didn't just start. And so surely it's one thing to march, it's one thing to tear down statues, but the real issues are who's dealing with the systemic problems affecting us on a daily basis. And that's what needs to be attacked. And who needs to be doing that? The leaders. We got sometimes people who are getting double time pay, overtime pay for part-time work. And I'm speaking of some of our political people, and you know where they are. But I'm saying to you is, these are not things that just started. They've been here since day one. And so when you have people saying, well, now we're going to study and learn more about slavery, where have you been if you don't know already America's history? And so I think we need to demand more of those persons who say that they're there to represent us. And that's why you see the turnovers that are taking place. And I would encourage more turnovers. If they're not there, vote them out.
Thank you, Governor. John Gregory asks, could you speak a little bit about how you were treated once you returned from Korea as a decorated combat hero? And how did your experiences in Korea shape you as a leader?
Question. Thank you. All of them are good questions. I didn't let anybody know that I had been decorated. I didn't even let my family know it. I didn't let the news media or anyone or any people know it, because my experience there let me know that really good heroic deeds were performed by people who never got mentioned, never were acknowledged, and some of them were killed and were dead. But Korea enabled me and showed me that I could be a leader. I was Field First Sergeant in Korea, commanding people. I learned there that from the officers that I had, that they enforced the rules of integration. They believed in promotion based on merit, not just on color. And so when I came back from Korea, though I've been exposed to the dangers and though I've been asked by fellow soldiers and all to help them and being involved, I knew how to lead. And I knew that it wasn't a racial thing, because many of these people had never had relationships with people of color, as I had never had any relationship with whites, to the extent of living with them, sleeping in the same quarters, eating in the same places, going to the same places of recreation, and forming bonds of friendship that lasted. So it enabled me to know that, yes, I can lead, and yes, America can change. More importantly, Virginia can change. And so I owe a great deal to military service, though I can tell you I wouldn't want to repeat what I went through again. It helped me tremendously, beyond measure.
Thank you so much for your service, Governor. P. Hayes asks, what would you say to young voters in particular who are questioning their impact and their ability to make an impact in the upcoming presidential election?
To say to those who don't want to listen to you, okay, I have another choice. I can vote for somebody else. When they are being ignored, that's why you see these splinter groups forming. That's why, as I said earlier in the remarks that I made generally, the unfortunate thing in the influence of money is such. It's not a question of what party is the best party. The question is which party listens to me, what people are hearing me. And to the extent you don't hear me, then I'm going to do what I can to vote you out. And that doesn't mean that I've got to run, but I can get somebody and support somebody who will hear what I've got to say and demand to be a part. Go to your city council meetings. Go to your boards of supervisors meetings. Go to your school board meetings. Go to the legislature. Listen for yourself. Don't let the people who say they represent you tell you what's going on. Find out for yourself. Then form your own groups, form your own organizations. Meet on regular bases around your communities and talk about the issues. And then always keep your eye on the money. Find out where the tax dollars are going, who's spending them, why they are not being spent where you think they should be spent, and demand what is right and criticize what's wrong.
Terrence Edwards asks, Governor Wilder, how did your undergraduate experience at Virginia Union University shape your career in politics?
My undergraduate career at Virginia Union was shaped because of the professors that I had there. I mean, they would tell you, we don't care what you think you are doing, you're going to have to get a better grip on yourself in terms of education. Dumb people run nothing. Dumb people are not even considered. I had one professor there, he was a white professor, and he would say, next to the mastery of the mother tongue, mathematics is going to be one of the more important things you need to understand. He taught calculus, et cetera, et cetera. He said, because it's going to teach you the principles of life, addition, subtraction, divide, multiply. Once you understand what those things are in terms of mathematical form, you can equate them to what it means in terms of practical forms, in terms of people who are living. Other professor there, Dr. Henry Jad McGuinn, would say, you must learn to pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps and lean steadfastly into the wind. And then you can overcome. I had so many professors that would take the time and talk to you and spend their time to encourage you and to demand that you do better than it's. Wilder, you're better than a C. And As a matter of fact, you're better than a C, so if you don't do better, I'm going to give you an F. But I made a C. That's what I'm going to give you the F for, because you can get a B or an A if you choose. So they pushed me, they encouraged me, but not just me. They did it for everyone. And else, I like the question because of this reason. These were the historical Black colleges and universities that took the time, the professors who worked at meager salaries. They didn't make the money, but they spent the time. They encouraged us in terms of our dress, our deportment, how we walked, how we talked, how we acted, and how we behaved and how we interacted. And they made certain that we understood that we were all doing this together for the betterment of mankind.
No, Governor, I think you touch on a really important point. I mean, the role of HBCUs unquestionably has always been investment in individuals and people, and realizing that everyone has potential and trying to help everyone realize their fullest potential. It wasn't predetermined by a SAT score or a GRE score. It was certainly that investment. So we commend our HBCUs, all of our HBCUs, and particularly our partner at Virginia Union.
You're absolutely right, Dean.
We have another question, and we're going to be wrapping up our Q&A section soon. We'll have a few more questions, and then we're going to run this out. Mason Mills asks, what are some of the steps that are needed to change the current duopoly of which you speak?
Well, no, Mason, and it's a good question. I think to the extent that we demand more of those who say they represent us, and demand that they meet with us, speak with us, talk with us. When I was elected to the state Senate in Virginia, we didn't have an office. We did not have any legislative assistant. We didn't have a secretary. And yet we had opportunities to meet and talk with the people. They demanded it of us. And so what I'm trying to suggest is that in streamlining the representation or government, we created a bureaucracy in government. We have more assistants, more deputies, more assistants. When I was elected, we had 2 student loan offices, state student loan offices. I was elected as governor within 6 to 8 blocks of each other. I said, what the devil is going on? So we didn't have a cabinet at the time when I was elected to state senate. And so people had more direct involvement. Now I think it's been streamlined to the extent almost of removal. And I think we need to get rid of that barrier from the people. I think there needs to be more of a communication with the people, more direct access to the people. And then when you call your legislator, talk to that legislator rather than the assistant. Talk to the person that you elected rather than some bureaucrat, and to make certain that government is of, for, and by the people.
We have a question here reflecting on the legacy of Congressman Lewis getting into, as he says, good trouble. Can you speak a bit to some of the good trouble you've gotten into over the years?
Well, it's like quicksand with me. The further I walked, the further I got into it. As I referenced earlier, I was told I wouldn't be reelected if I stood the ground for carrying me back to Virginia. I was threatened. I had a cross burned in front of my house as it relates to my pushing for the Martin Luther King holiday bill. And so if you have concerns about what you're doing, then you shouldn't do it. And you learn that early on in life. If you know what's right, as Socrates said, then proceed. But then you have to know thy right. You got to know what is right. And you got to have somebody and something. And that's why, fortunately, we had communities to participate. So I would encourage us to rebuild the communities, make certain that there's the strength there for people to know that they don't have to wait to get a chance to be heard. Identify the issues. Let the people in the media know what those issues are. Speak to those issues. And as I said before, demand what's right and criticize what's wrong.
And then this will be we'll let this be our final question, and that is, and I'm sure this is going to be difficult, but what has been Peter Jordan asked, what has been your biggest accomplishment in your amazing 90 years of life?
The biggest accomplishment that I look upon is that I've been able to start some 30 plus 50 years ago now in terms of my Senate career, and to be able to look back upon it now and to be received by the people, and that the people still believe that I may have made a contribution to the extent that I have. That means more to me than anything else, to know that it's not been in vain, but that the people consider it good for the people, all of the people, not for me. Because if they are not well, I'm not well. To the extent that I did all I could with what I had, I'm pretty much pleased.
Thank you, Governor. That's a great note to end on. And I want to join all the others in saying thank you for your service. Having been elected for office first in 1969, continuing to serve an incredible career, the impact of your contributions at the state level, at the local level, at the national level, at the international level are truly unparalleled. And we are indeed honored to have you as the namesake of the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs here at VCU. So thank you so much, Governor.
Thank you, Dean.
So to all of our participants, we want to say thank you so much for joining us for this opening session. It has been an outstanding kickoff with a wonderful keynote address by Governor Wilder, thinking about the concept of duopoly and how that impacts our current political climate today. Learning more about Governor Wilder's vision and his motivation to dedicate his life to public service, his work in Korea, his service in Korea, his experiences as a student at Virginia Union University. This has been a very rich and dynamic kickoff to what promises to be an outstanding day. So again, I want to thank our partners at Virginia Union University for co-hosting this event with us. And I also want to say we will be taking a short break throughout we will reconvene at 11 o'clock. Before you have the lineup for the day. Our next session, which will begin at 11 o'clock, so you have an opportunity to check your email and take another cup of coffee, will be a legal panel discussion that looks at the 30 years of judicial and legislative history. That is going to be moderated by Secretary James Dyke, who is the Secretary of Education for the Commonwealth of Virginia under Governor Wilder's administration. We'll be joined by Judge Gregory. It will be a dynamic panel for that. Then in this afternoon, after our lunch break, we will have a student panel discussion looking at the importance of civic engagement, where we will have students from the Wilder School at VCU as well as Virginia Union University talking about their impact and their engagement with civil society today. And we will round out our day today with our final panel, and Governor Wilder will be present for the 2020 election panel hosted by Dr. Larry Sabato at the University of Virginia to look at the 2020 election. Just as a quick reminder, you will need to join each session via a new session link. These were sent to you already remotely in an email. It should be in a confirmation there, but don't worry, if you don't have it, you can also find it in today's session chat box. So again, I would like to thank Governor Wilder for spending time with us today, congratulate him on his 30th anniversary of his historic inauguration. And I want to thank you, all of our participants, for joining into our celebration, for all of the accolades that you have provided throughout our session today. And I would like to thank Dr. Strayhorn and all of our colleagues at Virginia Union University. So we will see you back again promptly at 11 a.m.